Hello, change makers, global citizens, and thriving humanity leaders. I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, that's not me. I'm not a leader. And that's crazy, Carley, and a little bit intense. But the truth is, it is you, because all of us are going to have to learn how to lead now. AI, digitalization, reskilling, innovation, cyber threats, inequity, social justice, mental health decline, the political rift, climate, environment, pandemics, nuclear threats. Are you feeling a little bit overwhelmed? The age of disruption is here, and it is just getting started, and its key markers are frequency, intensity, and speed. Unprecedented speed. We are moving faster than we ever have before. But in what direction? My name is Carley Marcelle, and I'm a speaker, an extraordinary brand collaborator, and the founder of the Matutine Network. And I am a creative. I do a lot of things, but I care about one really big thing. I care about helping people to understand that this is a new world, and that in a new world, there are new rules. And helping you and your organization to understand the age of disruption, what the new rules are, the impact that it has on you and the people in your life, and giving you the resources that you need to not only cope with this new crazy world, but to thrive and to actually learn how to lead in this landscape, because we need you to. So this is the Thursday series called Reimagine Together. I invite you to join me and a wide array of progressive speakers who are committed to a thriving humanity future. My intention is for you to find community support here, to grow and expand, and for all of us to start thinking about how to take small actions every week that have big impact. Because the future doesn't happen to us, it's created by us, by the small actions, the small perspective shifts, and the small choices that we make today that bring about a different tomorrow. So if this is hitting home or striking your curiosity, please do subscribe to the channel now, like the video, and I ask you that as you're listening to today's interview, I want you to think about one person who would find this conversation helpful, and go ahead and send it to them, because this content can only make a difference if it finds its way to the right people, and it really helps us out. So today we're talking about a big word, a word that most of us both crave and fear, a word that has been the center of our human experience, always, and continues to be, and that word is love. But what is love? What does it mean? How do we measure it? And how do we make sure that we build societies that support it? I am thrilled to bring you Samantha Thomas. Samantha is a social entrepreneur, a love researcher, the founder of the Just Choose Love movement and the Love Summit, a business and leadership conference that brings together business, government, and civil society leaders to discuss and develop solutions to today's most pressing global challenges. And today, we're going to talk about where we get love wrong in our lives and business. Samantha is going to teach you about what a love ethic is and how to practice it. We're going to look at what a reimagined business would look like if it practiced the love ethic. And in the end, please do stay tuned, because we're going to give you three small actions you can take today that are going to help to bring a healthier ethic of love into our future. Let's meet Samantha.
We often hear that business is a force for positive change, and that's true, but I want to talk about you. You guys are business. You make the world what it is, and creating sustainable, successful businesses really starts with you. The Love Summit brings together business leaders, government officials, entrepreneurs, and people from all walks of life to discuss at the conference how business can drive social and environmental and economic change. Love Summit 2017 is taking place at LPK headquarters in Cincinnati, Ohio. LPK is an incredible brand design agency, and their culture at LPK is truly one that exemplifies love in the workplace. What we look at the Love Summit is really the people within the walls of those businesses, those organizations. So we really get to the root of what drives happy, healthy human habits. What makes people happy? What makes them feel like they have purpose? How do they find their why? And how does that why drive everything that they do in their life? When employees feel companion love in the workplace, they're actually known to have higher performance. And of course, higher performance means that they're more engaged. And when employees are more engaged, that means they're more productive. And when they're more productive, of course, you're going to have a better bottom line. So we really like to start with people in business. My dream for the Love Summit is that the movement of love spreads like wildfire in business and in daily lives of people around the world, and that people everywhere are inspired to treat each other from a place of more kindness and love and compassion.
Love Summit rocks.
I'm just really ready to lead with love.
Love Summit is a bold, courageous event that's much needed in today's business world.
It was transformational. The Love Summit captures this idea that who we become depends on what we do every day. Our habits are our destiny. And if we want to have loving businesses and a loving planet, we need to learn to practice the habits of love at work. And the Love Summit brought that to life. I'm thrilled I was here. Can't wait for Love Summit 2018.
Hi, Samantha.
Hey, Carly. I'm so good. I'm really excited to be here. I'm like feeling a lot of excitement and good energy.
Yeah, that video is so nice. I think I saw a shorter version before, and it was like I got to experience the entire summit, which is so incredible.
Yeah, I haven't watched it in a while, so thanks for putting it on. Every time I watch it, it inspires me. If there's a time that I'm feeling kind of low or down or not motivated to do my work, or kind of, it's hard work bringing this message into the world, and sometimes it can feel, there can be a struggle, and I could feel a little hopeless. And whenever I watch that video, it just brings back good memories and inspires me. So thanks.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So on the note of kind of needing some inspiration and stuff, before we dive into all of the incredible big work that you're doing and where it all started and your journey, let's just kind of dive into just right now in this moment. I'd love to hear kind of, how's your heart? How are you? And what are you noticing in the world right now?
How's my heart? My heart is pretty good right now. Yeah, there's an ebb and flow, as with all things in life. But right now, I feel pretty lucky to feel pretty good. My heart feels really full. So thanks for asking. And yeah, I'm doing well. There was a third question that you asked. What was the last one?
What are you noticing right now? We're going through. Yeah, I just spoke before. What are you noticing? Anything in particular? If nothing, it's fine.
No, I'm noticing a lot. Noticing too much. So what do I focus on now and share with you? I'm noticing that people are really seeming like they're inspired to change and wanting to change, and they're yearning for something new. And I feel like people are reimagining what their life and the world could look like. And I think that over, these last several months, as we've been in this pandemic with COVID, and it's given a lot of us a time to slow down. Not everyone. There's people that are still out there working as they were before the pandemic. And I think it's really important to remember those people, that not everyone's had a chance to really slow down. But for those of us who have, and even the people that are still out there working, of course, they're in this we're all here together in this experience together, right? So they're picking up on what's going on, obviously, too. We're all in the pandemic. So I think people are just really, I'm noticing that people are questioning a lot more now. And I think that's really beautiful and great, because that's creating space for something new to arise.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as a leader, actually, I'm noticing a few people as we come in live right now. Please feel free to join in and put in the comments if you have any questions along the way at any point. go ahead and bring those, and we'll make sure to bring them in at the end also. Any questions that you have for Samantha. Okay, now my question to you. So where have you felt the most growth or the biggest challenge as a leader right now in this moment, especially the last few months?
That's a really big question. So I might have to talk through it to get to the answer, because I've actually been in school in a master's program over the last year. And prior to doing this master's research program in global prosperity, I was directing a nonprofit organization for 6 years. So I was really in my leadership element, right? And just in that kind of mode every day. And while I think that I still feel that in my day-to-day life, even when I'm in school, and I'm in school right now and doing this program because I'm doing research on my theories about love in society. So that kind of leadership concept is always in my mind, but it's a different type of leadership that I stepped into over this last year. And I think right now as a leader, and as I'm finishing up my master's research program, which is over at the end of this month, I'm just I am reimagining how I'm going to come into the world as a leader, because I don't think it's going to be in the way that it was before. So kind of looking at where I led in the past, how I led in the past, how I liked how I led, what I didn't like about how I led, and how I can do better and show up better, and really thinking as a leader myself, how can I serve? Because that's what leadership is all about, right? It's really about service to others. And so really thinking and looking within myself about what that looks like and what that means to me and how I can serve and help others.
Great. Yeah, I think we're in such an incubation, a reflective period, right? Where it's just like, what is a lot of this channel and the work, like what does leadership mean in this new landscape? What changes need to happen within ourselves? And it is shifting. I think all of us can kind of pick up on what we used to think is different, and it's maybe not even the time for full action yet. It feels very reflective. There's like a pause button, like the challenge is almost, at least for me personally, it's been, and don't be like letting go of the triggers, which is different than what it's been before. So, thank you for sharing. Let's move to your movement. Can you tell us a little bit about Just Choose Love, where it is right now, especially, and then we'll get into kind of where it comes from?
Sure. So Just Choose Love is a global movement that is working on bringing awareness to the importance of love in business and government and our societal systems, and raising awareness about the difference between what we think love is, or we tend to think love is, and what love looks like outside of the context of like a romantic and sentimental notion.
Yeah, definitely. And when was the moment that you kind of realized this is something that needs to be dealt with? We need to deal with the word love. I need to go this big, this deep.
Well, I know we talked about this a little bit in the Instagram live that we did the other day, but I also know not everybody was on that. But so love and the importance of love has been a big part of my life since I was a kid. Kind of grew up with a lot of teachings around love by my mother. And I didn't grow up religious or following any specific spiritual philosophy per se, but love was like our religion. So that was a big part of my childhood. and the environment that I grew up in. And so, I'm a big believer in the fact that I think our environment shapes us more than anything. So that I can't deny that I think that was part of kind of what led me down this path. But then in my adult life, I kind of came back to that notion of love in a less spiritual sense, but more kind of realistic sense, in the sense that I started to notice how it could and was or was not showing up in society. And that was in my experience in the business world and working at a nonprofit organization called Dream Change for several years, and going to a lot of business conferences that were all about bringing more sustainability to business, more kind of in the environmental sense, like how businesses can develop more sustainable technologies and increase their bottom line by doing so, and that kind of thing. And I felt like there was a lot of great information at these conferences about how to combat certain issues like climate change through business, but I also felt like there wasn't enough attention to the interconnectedness between the complex global challenges that businesses are trying to solve today. And I felt like without acknowledging that interconnectedness between all of these global challenges, that it's impossible to you can't just solve one and not the other. You have to solve them all. And we can, I think, solve them all simultaneously if we're coming from the right place, and it'll be much more effortless if we do that. And I think that common place that they all need to be addressed by is this place of love, because love really means when you're coming from a loving place, you naturally want to do things that are better for the environment, better for others, so on and so forth. So I think that was my big kind of like aha moment with love.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's as more movements emerge from different, looking at issues from different angles, there's a realization that it's like our health, right? It's like, I have a pancreas issue. Like there's something wrong over here. And it's like, yeah, but it's related to this, your daily habits, how you set up your life in this way, the thoughts that you're thinking every day. Like, we can't isolate problems anymore. And you have chosen a really big, important topic that is kind of the birth of everything, which is, it is our relationship with love. So when it comes to your background and what you have discovered in the love journey, the love examination journey, where do we get love wrong?
I mean, a lot of ways, but I think that the number one way that we get it wrong is in thinking of love always. Usually, I think people think of love as a romantic or sentimental concept, and that love is just this warm, soft, mushy gushy thing. And sure, it can be sometimes, but really love can be the hardest thing in the world to choose. It takes, and I get chills thinking about it, because it takes so much courage to choose love. And I think that that's why we live in a world that is in many ways unloving right now, because it's really easy to choose fear. It's easy to fall into patterns of fear and fearful behavior and the mindset of scarcity. And love takes a lot of courage. So I think that that's one place we get it wrong. And then also we tend to think of love as an emotion and a feeling. And once again, we can experience love as an emotion and a feeling, but love more than anything is actually an action.
Yeah, understanding that relationship between the two, and we so often just focus on the feeling, emotional aspect of it. And what has been, I mean, just out of curiosity, before we dive into, I'm thinking, do we go into, this might come up in the love ethic? I'm like, go.
We could go to all the places. We'll just go back and forth.
Let's start with, let's stay on the business track for a second. What have been some of, as you look at love and as you started to develop this ethic, I'm guessing it was in response to some of this how we get love wrong and an idea that people aren't getting it, or so what were some of the challenges? What are some of the specific stories that you had when you were in the business world, especially saying, I'm going to do a love summit? What was the response to that?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked. I haven't talked about this in a while, and it's important, I think, to remember that when I came up with the concept for the Love Summit back in 2015, I hosted, so there's this advertising agency out in Portland, Oregon. For people watching who are in the creative world, they're probably familiar with it. It's called Wieden & Kennedy. They're the largest privately owned advertising agency in the world, and they're most well known for their work with Nike. So the co-founder, Dan Wieden, came up with the slogan, "Just do it" for Nike. And then they work with many other companies on that level. Really, really cool agency. And talk about love and business. They're doing some really courageous stuff. But even though they are a really courageous agency, and even though John Perkins, who is the founder of, okay, stay with me for a sec, guys. John Perkins is the founder of the nonprofit that I used to direct. The nonprofit was called Dream Change. That's where I first created the Love Summit and came up with the concept. And really, I have to attribute that coming up with the concept to many conversations with people like John Perkins and our board members. Scott James was one of our board members at the time. He's an incredible entrepreneur himself. And it was in a conversation with the three of them, actually, that the concept for the Love Summit arose. But in any case, John Perkins is friends with Dan Wieden, the co-founder of Wieden & Kennedy. And so that's how we got an in to Wieden & Kennedy. And I remember going to meet Dan for the first time in his office back in 2015 at Wieden & Kennedy in Portland. And he wanted to talk about what I had in mind for this event called the Love Summit. And I just remember sitting with him and explaining it to him. And he really jived with the concept, but still at the end, he said, "Are you sure you want to call it the Love Summit?" And I told him, yes, I'm sticking to it. I think that we need to stop shying away from this word. I know it's a big word. I know it's a scary word, but I think that we can't keep beating around the bush. This is, like you said, Carley, I'm really glad that you used that analogy of health. You know, when we have a health issue and we say, okay, I have, there's something wrong with my pancreas, but you just treat the symptoms of it, you're not really going to solve the underlying issue of that health problem. Exactly. You're just going to mask the symptoms. And I think by just, beating around the bush and not just heading straight, how do I say it?
Yeah,
just not shying away from the word love and using it. Then we're going to continue this vicious cycle of just going round and round. And so I said, yeah, I'm using that word, take it or leave it. And I was so thrilled that he still gave me a chance and let me host the first event there. So yeah, I've had many, many experiences with business people, specifically mostly men, but women too, but mostly men. Sorry, guys. I love you all. You guys are great. And I've seen you growing so much.
We're working on it.
But no, women have issues with it too. I don't want to say, it's really not one or the other, but I have noticed, especially back a handful of years ago, a lot of men had issues with that word. But I think it's becoming more, especially now with what's going on today around different social justice issues and politically speaking, just like the dire socio-political climate and socioeconomic climate. I think people are finally realizing like we need to take this farther. There's something more that we're missing here. And I'm seeing the use of the word love much more now than I did back then. But yeah, that's just one of many examples.
We talk about in some of the the move into, as cultures start to shift and the move into what we call beta culture and moving away from more of an alpha culture, which while it's associated with the gender, right, we do think of it being more masculine. The truth is that women adopt it too, right? So we all have both of these energies within us, and kind of finding love certainly starts to fall more on the feminine. We've been imbalanced. We've been way too in the patriarchy and all the toxic alpha culture. And so it is, but it's interesting to see. We know that it's a topic that needs to be addressed, but I so appreciate the work that you do, which is finding a way to speak to it that allows a lot of people to not have to have the experience of the gooey and sentimental and feel like it's just that, and go, okay, no, this is actually something practical though too.
Yeah.
So let's look at your work right now and how you're doing that.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, a big mission of mine personally with this work around love has been to normalize the word in society and universalize it. So what I mean by that is, like you just said, Carley, making it so that people from all different sociocultural backgrounds, different walks of life can resonate with the concept of love in business and society. Because we talk about love a lot in different aspects of our culture, like in the New Age movement, it's pretty big. But, and people go to places like Burning Man and it's all about love. And that's great. That's cool. If that's you, go for it. But I think it's really important that we bring that message out into the real world in a way that is digestible for everybody.
Yes.
So kind of in that experience of working at Dream Change for 6 years, doing 2 love summits there, realizing that there was a lot of pushback from the business world and business people about that word. I mean, I'm surprised that the first 2 love summits were as successful as they were. Like, it was really I don't know, for me, a miracle, just considering the way that people do perceive love in the business world. And then also the fact that Dream Change was so small and we had such a tiny, tiny team, and to pull off those events and the way that it transformed people was really miraculous and really cool. But at the end of that, 6 years, it was basically the end of the second Love Summit, I started to realize that I was ready for something new. And I was feeling like I was ready to, or wanting to do even more to normalize and universalize this message. And I started to feel like I was going to need to get some research or maybe data behind love and maybe start to measure it a little bit, if that's even possible. I'm still kind of trying to figure that out. Is love even measurable? Can we measure these concepts of love and justice and freedom? There's this activist named, Donella Meadows, who's amazing, who highly recommend reading her work. And it's more kind of in the environmental sphere, but she was a systems thinker, really, really cool work. But I remember reading a quote by her saying something along the lines of, nobody can define or measure love or justice or freedom, but if we don't take a stand for them, and if we don't try, and if we don't pay attention to them, then we're just going to continue to overlook them and not embrace them and work towards them. Something like that. I totally butchered it. But anyways, what was that?
So paraphrase, it's hard. Paraphrasing is hard.
I know. I need to work on my memory. But anyways, I right now I'm exploring the possibility of measuring love. I mean, and that is what I'm doing right now. So I've been in, when was it? I left Dream Change in 2017. I resigned from my position. And then I spent a year basically just exploring options for Just Choose Love, which is the movement that Love Summit now lives under. And I looked at some different business opportunities, some different partnerships, and was exploring, and nothing really felt fully aligned. And I was talking to different investors, potential investors, these incredible businessmen that they tended to be like, they got the concept of love to a large extent, but still there was a lot of pushback. Like, it was just kind of putting it in my face over and over again that, like, Samantha, there needs to be more. You need to be able to give these people more. They don't fully get it. So then I started exploring the possibility of going to school and doing research on love. And I found this program at University College London, in London, that is called a Global Prosperity Masters Research Program. And it's a year-long intensive program. And I decided to go there and to do some research on love. And that's what I've been working on. And basically the program, it starts with a couple terms of just classes and learning how to do research and different research methods. Also learning about the concept of prosperity. What does prosperity mean to people? Because prosperity, like love, is a very broad word, and it has different meanings to different people. Basically, what they're trying to do at the Institute for Global Prosperity at UCL is they're looking at different ways to measure prosperity other than GDP, because GDP really isn't, we've found, an accurate measurement of prosperity. And also recognizing that depending on your sociocultural background, where you grew up, where you live, where you come from, you are going to have a different idea of prosperity than somebody else. So I spent, the first several months in classes studying these different things, and really it was an amalgamation of the social sciences, so sociology, psychology, anthropology, economics. And then at the end, we are given the freedom to choose our own topic to research within reason, related to global prosperity through our dissertation. And that's what I'm working on now and just finishing up. And I've been working on research around the love ethic as a force for social justice, and specifically looking at Bell Hooks' love ethic. And she's an African-American cultural critic and feminist who's written a lot about feminism, patriarchy, love. So that's what I've been working on.
Amazing. All right, so let's look at it. What are you finding?
What am I finding? Oh my goodness.
I know. Can we break it down just a little bit? I know you're in the middle of your research, so it's not necessarily, we're not looking at a finished product completely, but we wrap our brains around it. What are we finding?
Sure. So I think there's a couple things, and I have some notes here. I have a quote I want to share with you that I actually wrote down, so I won't butcher that one. But I think I want to really center this around Bell Hooks' theory of the love ethic. And by the way, she's written many, many books. This is her only one specifically about love, but I highly recommend it. All About Love by Bell Hooks. This is her pen name. Her real name is Gloria Jean Watkins. But Bell Hooks and the reason why I'm sharing this is because I really resonate with her definitions of love and the principles of love that she shares. And through my research, I found that what she's sharing is really the common thread amongst what all love-based leaders shared in regards to leading with love. So if you think of people like Mandela, Gandhi, Dr. King, the list can go on. But Bell Hooks draws on this definition from Scott Peck from his book, The Road Less Traveled. And I'm just going to read it to you quickly. So it goes, love is the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth. Love is as love does. Love is an act of will, namely both an intention and an action. Will also implies choice. We don't have to love, we choose to love. So I think that this definition is really profound. There's a few things as we can break it down and look at, so what does love really mean? Let's talk about that. So love is connection. Love is the ability to extend ourselves, to notice the other, to kind of put our needs aside and notice the other's needs. It's also seeing ourself in the other. And it's the ability to, when we take the action to love, we are choosing to nurture the growth of someone or something else. And realizing that by doing that, we're also nurturing our own growth. And that it's a reciprocal process. And then I think lastly, I'll just say in this quote, I think something that's really important that they touch on is that love is an act of will. It's a choice. It's an intention. Intention is so important. You know, I think, and maybe we'll talk about that a little later. I don't want to digress, but intention is so important, and choice is so important, and will is so important. We do not have to love, we choose to love. And that's why love is an action.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And so keep going. Wait, did you have, are we?
No. I felt like you had something you wanted to ask, but go ahead.
No, well, I was just thinking, I do love, I know you've shared that definition before, and I think it is an incredibly powerful, the best definition I've ever seen. Because it talks about, it does talk about that reciprocal relationship. What is done to the other is done unto the self. What is done unto the self is done unto the other. That mirror. And I think it's, the one question that I have is when you say putting your needs aside for someone else, I feel like this is something to be clarified, because there can be some confusion around what that really means and looks like in both from a business perspective, and then of course as an individual in any kind of quote relationship, whether that's familial or romantic.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought that up. I think that is an important point to clarify. And I'm curious, before I talk a little bit about that, how did you take that? How do you perceive that?
So I took it as, when I hear put your needs aside for someone else, I've heard this from when it comes to love. And I think that this is a slippery slope of truth to where it becomes self-sacrificial and highly codependent. And very much of, it means in order to take care of others, it means I must suffer. I must not take care of myself, that I put somebody else's needs above my own. And I actually think that can get really trappy. While it can go, right, it kind of goes back and forth. We talk about this extreme between selfishness and martyrdom. And when we start to fall into martyrdom so it's just one of those points that putting needs aside, whereas when I hear spiritual growth for one person, for yourself and for another, then we look at what spiritual growth means, because sometimes walking away is supporting somebody's spiritual growth. Sometimes being, as I've shared in some of my own personal lessons in the last few years, it's the hard thing to do is to actually work in a different way. So I just would love to hear you speak to that a little bit, and kind of what your feelings are, or your thoughts are more accurately on it.
Yeah, all of these things have come up a lot in my research. Actually, yesterday I was just coding data from a focus group discussion that I hosted on Bell Hook's love ethic as a force for social justice, specifically in the context of racial justice and looking at the Black Lives Matter movement. And so a few things came up in relation to what you just talked about. But first, I just want to say that everybody's needs, including our own needs, are so important.
Yeah.
Needs, your needs, my needs are so important. And I don't think that anybody should ever fully put their needs aside. Just have to say that. Yeah. So I did not mean that. Your needs are important, and you need to remember those needs. And honor other people when you can, as you can. Boundaries are an important part of love. I think that people often conflate or believe that love and boundaries can't coexist, and that there couldn't be anything farther from the truth. Often, actually, Brené Brown said this, that it's typically, from her research, she's found that the most loving people are the most boundaried people. But specifically, Carley, what you said about walking away from a situation, that was a big topic of discussion in the focus group that I conducted, where participants were talking about, when is the right time to walk away? And is it always a loving thing to do to walk away when, and it's so, the situation isn't black and white, no pun intended, talking about the Black Lives Matter movement. I think it's so circumstantial, depends on what's going on in the situation. I remember in the focus group discussion that one participant was saying, okay, I want to be loving. I want to honor these principles of the love ethic. I want to lead from the principles of the love ethic and use that as, a way to guide my action. But sometimes I find myself in these situations, specifically, so it was a Black man talking about wanting to hold space for other people to, white people, I think probably predominantly, to share their experiences around racism and kind of gain more clarity and understanding and knowledge as to where they've gone wrong or what they just didn't understand about their racist tendencies in the past. And also, I feel like it's really important to add, we can all be racist. All of us are racist all of the time. It's not just white people. It's not just Hispanic people. It's not just Black people. It's all of us. Highly recommend the book, How to Be an Anti-Racist by Dr. Ibram Kendi, who talks about this. And anyways, so the guy in the focus group discussion was saying, the Black man was saying that I want to be here to hold space for people to understand more how they can do better, but I also want to do that while acknowledging my own traumas and difficulties around these situations. And saying, I guess he was expressing that sometimes he feels inclined to walk away when a situation is getting problematic or he's not feeling good about what somebody's saying. And then another person responded and kind of rebutted that by saying, well, I don't think that walking away from a situation, from someone, for instance, that has a different perspective than us, is really loving. And then he said, if it gets hot and heavy and, really heated or violent or something like that, or it's like you've tried many times, it doesn't make you feel good, you're not getting anywhere, that's a different story. Yeah. But he was pushing this idea of the importance of being able to communicate with people who hold different perspectives to us.
Absolutely.
And that's a big part of the love ethic, is being able to not take offense to things that, and that goes back to, that idea of intention, always looking at what is someone's intention. Are they really intending to be a jerk? Are they intending to be racist? Are they intending, where are they coming from? And that's a huge part of practicing the love ethic, is being able to, that's kind of what I meant about putting our needs aside. And it's not really, maybe shouldn't have used the word need.
Well, just specifically because I know a lot of people confuse and that it wasn't, language, right? Language is so limiting. It's like,
and it's so important. Definitions are so important. Yeah.
No, but it's good. Yes. So sorry, please continue. But yeah, it's like, what is that thing that we put on the side?
So I think really the thing is it's like I don't really like using this word. I was going to say ego, but I don't like using that because it has this kind of new age feel. And
yeah,
but it is, it's like, it's our preconceived notions, our ideas of what we think we know, and just kind of entering a situation from a more innocent place.
Yep. And
putting sometimes our need to be heard aside, or our need to push our
need to be right.
Yes.
Right? Maybe because that's the ego part too. Right? Like when I come into a conversation, I don't want to be yelled at. I want to know that I'm right. But you're never right, or you never know for sure that you're right. Makes it very hard to come in, like the ego part that you're talking about. Does that I find that consistently, but does that speak to it a little bit?
Hugely. I actually want you to talk more about that, because that's such a big thing that we're experiencing right now, right? I think, we're seeing this, especially in the digital age, when people are communicating in such a different way, which is new to us. And I think that there's always that kind of desire, that yearning to be right. I think we all have it to some extent, and it shows up in, of course, in-person situations, but especially online. We can just be more volatile and insensitive with how we treat people and speak to people. And so, yeah, I'm curious. I want to hear you talk about that a little bit more. What you were just saying about, that need to be right.
No, I think it does what I have noticed in myself, right? So I won't even speak. I've seen it in other environments and with other people, but I'm most interested in how I can only go through it in my own experience, and where I've seen growth, or where I see struggles and barriers within myself, is when my ego gets involved, because I want to be right. I want to come in. I want to know that I'm the good guy. I want to know that I know what I need to be talking about. I want to know, that this was the destruction of the ego, so to speak, and especially recently. We all have an ego, and we all need to have some kind of definitions in order to get us through life. But we can't grow, and we can't find common ground in any part of our life if we come at it wanting to be right. There's always something to learn. And I ask friends and people who are really, they have great ethics, and for the most part, can come down, and I'm like, I agree with you, but what's your goal? Do you want to have a conversation and help this person to move to the next step, to support their spiritual growth and your own, or do you want to be right? Because you only get one. Only one stands a chance of getting us anywhere. The other one isn't just, it's less likely to work. So it's not always an easy choice, but I think it sounds like to me, when you're speaking of the needs aside, it's our emotions, are, being in touch with our feelings, but not being run by them, and allowing ourselves to put our ego and our need, our righteousness, our need to be right aside, and show up in a more vulnerable, curious way that can allow for, she might be wrong. Dare to be wrong, Brene Brown.
I also love what you said about emotions, and because I really think that's a big part of it, is putting our emotions aside. And, emotions are actually, from what I've researched and learned, the lowest form of consciousness, or aspect of consciousness. Because when we come from an emotional place, it's not that emotions aren't good ever. They're important. They're a big part of our life. But they can tend to, like you said, attach us to this kind of narrative, our story.
Yes.
Which we have to remember when we come into these situations with people, when we're having a discussion, say, about a really challenging social justice issue. We're coming to that conversation carrying so much baggage. We're coming with our story, who we are, where we've been. I think it's really important to recognize we can only, if we aren't aware that we're coming to a situation with all of these things and this story and this narrative, then we can get so stuck in that narrative that we aren't able to notice the other. We're not able to extend ourselves for the other, because we're stuck in our story, our vision. And a big part of love is being able to extend beyond that and recognize the other.
Yes, loving this direction. But I think, as you're saying too, that the feeling aspect is important in the way of, we have feelings. It's a part of being human. And I like to think of them as like a compass, right? So when you've experienced jealousy, hatred, gluttony, right? The 7 sins, they're cues. They're a gift. It means something's off. You're not coming from a place of love.
Yes.
not centered. You're in an emotional story or like a cultural story that's limiting.
Mm-hmm.
I love those emotions. I'm always like, oh yeah, are you feeling envious? Good. Like, where's it coming from?
Exactly.
Why are you jealous? What's wrong
Yes.
with it?
They're all important. They are all so important. And that's the awesome thing about human beings, right? Is that we have the ability to witness ourselves and to notice when we're doing something. And so, yeah, it can be a really cool process to be able to notice when we're feeling something and really think about, where is that coming from? Where is that really coming from?
Right.
And then, and yeah, I definitely didn't make it, I did not intend to make it seem that emotions aren't important, because empathy, for example, that's the ability to empathize is an emotional process, right? To some extent. I mean, it's also intellectual. It's also a mindful practice, but it's something that, there's people that are deemed empaths, like they can literally feel what other people are feeling. They're really, we can just call them hypersensitive people or highly sensitive people. And some people are definitely more like that than others, but anybody can be empathetic, because it is not just an emotional, sensatory process. It is also a practice and process of mindfulness.
Absolutely. That's a great way of explaining it. And thank you. Because I think so often that's confused on empaths too. People are like, oh, they're just highly emotional. It's like, no. They're highly aware of the emotional state.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually the opposite of what you would think.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a great thank you. I'm like, I use that. All right. God, we could go on for so long. I'm like, okay, let's redirect here real quick and take a look at, as we look at this ethic and this exploration, we were going to do an example of what it looks like in business. Do you want to go straight to the imagined state, or should we go through one maybe current example of what practicing love would look like, or an example of somebody who has done this in their organization?
Yeah, let's jump to that. I think it's important to give people a business example.
Right.
So I'm going to give the example of, I was talking to Carley about this before we got on here, and just having very mixed feelings about throwing out names of businesses that I feel are practicing the love ethic or fully embracing it, because to be quite honest, there's not one I've come across that's fully embraced a love ethic yet. Granted, my research has been more focused on social movements over the last year, so I have not been really in that space so as much as I was before when I was doing the Love Summit. So initially we were going to talk about love in Black Lives Matter and how it's showing up in racial justice. But I think that it is really important to understand that love can show up in business, and there's so many different examples of how that is possible. And the one example that I would like to give today is of the company Gravity Payments in Seattle, Washington. They're actually in Ballard, but really close to Seattle. And I think they also have an office in Boise. So Gravity Payments, I became aware of them in 2015 when I was doing the first Love Summit. They are an online credit card processing company founded by this young man named Dan Price. He's the CEO. And I became aware of them because they were all over the news in 2015, because Dan Price, the CEO, had spontaneously decided to raise the minimum salary for all of his employees. I think there's about 100 employees, maybe more, at the company, to raise the minimum salary to $70,000 for every employee. And he took a pay cut from his, I think it was like $1.1 million salary or something like that. So suddenly he started getting all this media attention. And anyways, I reached out and I asked him if he would speak at the Love Summit, and he did. And he gave a really great talk. It can be found on our YouTube channel. And I think that that's one example of the love ethic in business. It's looking at the needs of other people. It's looking at, Dan had this experience of seeing kind of the whole picture, looking at, okay, what are my needs, Dan's needs?
Right. And $1.1 million, is that good?
Yeah. Do I need do I need $1.1 million a year? And what do my employees need? And he decided to extend himself for the growth of those people because he felt that they needed more than they were getting, right? Now, Dan received, and Gravity Payments got a lot of, they were criticized a lot for making that move. I think Dan was called a socialist a lot. Yeah. And I was just looking at Dan's Twitter before I got on with you, and I wanted to read you one of his tweets, which I found really interesting because I was like, I wonder where they're at right now with their work and how the company's doing.
Yeah.
So he said, Dan says, when I started a $70,000 minimum wage for my company in 2015, Rush Limbaugh said, I hope this company is a case study in MBA programs on how socialism does not work because it's gonna fail. Since then, our company tripled and we're a successful case study at Harvard Business School.
Amazing.
So, I just, that's one example that I can think of. And there's so many different ways that love can show up in business, whether it's raising the salary for your employees, whether it's creating more gender equality in the workplace, racial inequality amongst employees, things like that. The possibilities are endless because love is endless.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you bring up, talk about old stories getting in the way, right? So I'm not going to say, I'm not an economist, so I'm not going to say I think I think it's all very important, but we have so many stories attached to these systems that at the end of the day are supposed to be neutral. And our stories and ideas and history that is attached to these systems can be so limiting. It really gets in the way of us moving forward or having productive dialogues because it gets slammed to the ground and put into a bucket immediately. And, I think as you talk about moving forward in love and the love ethic, there's a challenge to a lot of business leaders, especially individuals, to all of us, but especially to business leaders. Just break out of the old story. It doesn't need to fall into that bucket so quickly. Can it just be something that he was supporting the growth of employees by helping them to be financially more abundant, and he had plenty for himself, period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why do we got to take it so far in all of our fears of, if we can just take that baby step, that love baby step. So I think it's a wonderful example. And if you reimagine the place when, if businesses were really doing this, taking these baby steps, what do you think, if you, I don't know, think of I love to engage the full idealist, right? Like a company that really, it's like Samantha's company that is practicing fully the love ethic. If you paint us a little picture of what that could look like.
First of all, we would have the principles of love on our wall, clear as day in the office, or, so many of us are not working in an office anymore. And I think actually it's going to be like this I think that things are just going to change and people aren't going to be working in offices as much, but every employee is going to have this list of principles of love on hand all the time. It's going to be in our employee handbook. And I'm just going to read you. So these are bell hooks, principles of the love ethic. And I'm actually working on my own through my research principles of love, but these ones are very important. And so I'll share them now. They are affection and care. So open and honest affection being open and showing affection and care and not being afraid to do that. So affection, care, commitment, responsibility, respect, knowledge, accountability, integrity, the will to cooperate, and trust. Those are the principles of Bell Hooks' theory of the love ethic. And so that will be in the employee handbook. What the company would look like would be something like this. There would be gender equality and racial equality amongst employees. It would be even across the board. Everyone, as many cultures as possible are represented. We have not a huge team because it's really important, or maybe the company is big, but the teams in different locations stay small, because intimacy is a really important aspect of love. And it's really, smaller groups are more conducive to more meaningful communication and conversation. Whatever the company does, it's serving people and the planet. It's not doing any harm to anybody anywhere, and it's not doing any harm to the environment. And I'm not sure about the structure. I think that there can be many different organizational structures, meaning like there can be maybe, I hesitate to use this word, but I was going to say hierarchy, like a CEO and then people under. Mm-hmm. I don't think that some might argue, every business should be a cooperative in order to be loving, and everyone should have equal say. I don't know. I think I have mixed feelings about that. I think that things can be done really beautifully, having a leader, like a main leader of an organization, as long as that leader is really in service to the others. Mm-hmm. And also, a lot of people, not everyone wants to be a leader in that sense. Everyone has the ability to lead.
Yes.
In their own way. And that's really important to recognize. Everyone can lead, and everyone is a leader because everyone can serve. But not everyone wants to be in this big position, like leadership position, leading a lot of people. That's fine, So yeah, I'm not sure about the organizational structure. I think it could go a lot of different ways, but that's kind of what I envision for a company that would fully embrace the love ethic.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
It's so hard as we kind of look at defining and building a thriving humanity future. It's so important that we start to engage the imagination, to have little baby pictures of what that can look like, so that we can break out of these old stories and start to see a little glimpses of the new ones. And that is a really great image that I think we can all just start to see the direction that it's going in. I love this idea that you're speaking to leadership also, as far as I talk in a lot of these channels. I think everybody is going to have to learn how to lead themselves. Self-leadership is very important. Creative leadership is very important, because we have to learn how to listen to our own voice and how we contribute to an environment and leading. But as you're saying, it's like this doesn't mean we lose. It's kind of like, if you and me were in a group together, I'd be like, Sam, what are you great at? Okay, these 3 things. And I'm like, I got you over here. So we're in your bucket right now. We're in your areas of expertise, your thing, you lead. Mm-hmm. It's a nice, we can shift in and out of those roles as we identify where we're the strongest.
Absolutely.
And accept it. We've gone through so much.
I know. There's one thing I just did realize, though, which is really ridiculous and important, that I did not mention anything about the economics of that organization that I imagine practicing the love ethic, meaning that I didn't talk about people's salaries. And of course, people need to be, their needs need to be met, or their financial needs need to be met. But that's the thing about love and the love ethic, is that money, if we're talking about money, when we're acting, when we're using love as a social ethic and we're acting from that place, these economic issues that we so often struggle with and grapple with, they will not be, there will always be struggle to some extent. We live in a world that is, it's a world of opposites. There's always going to be 2 sides to things, but there will be less struggle in that sense. And when we're acting from that place of love, it's a given that everybody's economic needs are going to be met. So I have a hard time sometimes remembering that when I'm, speaking from that place. But just wanted to mention that because it is very important. We live in a very practical world, and these needs need to be met.
Yeah, they absolutely do. I think it's a great point, though, too. And we start to practice these other things, it's amazing what kind of like the domino effect, right?
Yeah,
It's like I forget about it because it kind of fixes itself.
exactly. You said it much more eloquently than I did, so thanks.
It's just nice to repeat a few times. We're still talking about some pretty big topics, so like, wait, let's repeat it once, twice, 3 times. Great. My own brain. Excellent. Well, I think we're going to, from time, we'll go ahead and do a little bit of a wrap here, a wrap up. And for our wrap up on this, thank you all for being here today and contributing. Just even your energy as you're here live is really appreciated and exciting. And we actually do, in the weirdest way, I do believe we somehow feel it. I can't explain it, but I do think it's true. And if you have any questions for Samantha, of course, you can go ahead and put them in the chat now or later in the comments. I'm going to go ahead and ask for 3 actions. We talk a lot about the small actions that lead to big impact. So at the end of each of these episodes, I'd like to ask for 3 small actions. One is to get to go ahead and try to get this video out. If you can think of somebody who would benefit from, oh, can you bring Samantha back, please? 1 second. If you could, thank you. One is bring to send to someone who you think would find this video, this conversation especially helpful. Maybe it's your boss. And second, if you can leave in the comments one takeaway, one thing that you found really interesting or new. It's helpful for us to kind of see as conversations move forward what part resonates the most and what's most exciting for people right now. So one comment in the one comment on a takeaway. And the third, Samantha, I'm going to leap to you, is a challenge or a small action that people can take to practice the love ethic.
Sure. So we talked about the principles of Bell Hooks' theory of the love ethic, and one of those principles is trust. And I think that trust is just more relevant now than ever for us living in this time. And as Carley's been talking about, the importance of reimagining and not being afraid to use our imagination and think about, you know, what's possible, and trusting that it's okay to not know the answer. I don't have all the answers. Carley doesn't have all the answers. None of us have all the answers, but we need to trust that as long as we're leading from this place of love, that we are on our way to something much better and the more beautiful world that I think we all know is possible. So please just trust the process as you take these next steps today and in the future.
I love that small action, just trust the process. Let's breathe into that one. That's hard. That is a big challenge. That's a big small action. Thank you. We have one comment that's come through from Jeanette that I would like to just read out and see if you maybe have an answer to it. If love is endless, where is it coming from? Any thoughts on that?
If love is endless, where is it coming from? Everywhere. It's omnipresent. It's everything. Love is everything.
Yeah, I would definitely agree, which is, I think, well, I was about to go down a road. I won't do it. But that's great. We'll just stop. We'll stop with that.
Okay. I won't push.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you to everyone here. Thank you so much, Samantha. I will see you on Instagram Live in just a moment. We'll jump over and see if we can have some more people that'll come join us. I'm going to go ahead and close out our show for today. Thank you. Thank you, Samantha.
Thank you.
And to go ahead and close us out, I just wanted to say one more time, a big thank you to everyone for showing up today. And our next episode of Reimagine Together is how to practice inclusion in your organizational stories with the brilliant quantum storytellers. Yes, there's actually a thing called quantum storytelling, and you're going to learn all about it with Donna Payhill and Mike Bonifer of 21 Day Story. This program is produced by the Machutin Experience Network. You can think of it as kind of the next generation of the TV network. And we're on a mission to create quality, innovative experiences that are going to help us to empower each other to create and serve a thriving humanity future. So learn more about the network and new experiences on our website, MachutineNetwork.com. And we will see you next week to a thriving humanity future. Much love.